right, Abby, this is for you. We're going to do some more normalization practice, just because you can look at theory and stare at those first normalization, talk about transitive and partial dependencies and little arrows and things. You get a good idea of it, but let's go through the practical working of it. And I have given you a little activity underneath Schoology. So let's take a look over there. I'll come on over as John Smart, your fellow student. And let's go to that course for him. He's got to get logged in. J Smart. Nope. Getting him logged in, and then going over to the web database course. And here's John Smart. Come on, John Smart, get over here. Here's John Smart. And let's look down in the assignments and see what we got going here. We're going to learn about a few other things as we go through Chapter 6, More Normalization Practice. Chapter 6, More Normalization Practice. And we have in there a data table. I'm not giving you a database this time. You have data that someone has produced for you that you're going to import into your database that you're then going to normalize. This is a very, very, I'd say, normal way that someone says, hey, I need a database. Here's all my data. Make a database out of it. We've been keeping this data. Put it in database form so it'll work better. And we hear databases will work better than having this huge Excel spreadsheet that we've been using for 10 years. Got lots of entries in there. And hopefully they're paying you $100 an hour or more to convert their data and put it in a very efficient form. So this is a mini project, and so let's download that data file, and then we'll get working on the project. So I'm going to download it into my course folder there, the little normalization college.xlsx. And let's take a look at these instructions. We're going to import, the plan is to import this data into Access. But let's go take a look at the data, and we're going to learn something about atomicity, atomic data. What in the world is that? Well, let's do a practical example of atomic data. I'm going to go and open Excel and open that data file. So I'm starting up Excel and coming over here in Excel. I'm going to open the file that I just downloaded. So I'm going to open, browse to where I just downloaded that over here on my extra drive, on my cs312 database. There it is, Normalization College. Going to open that data file. And here's my data file. Do you see any atomicity possibilities? There are two atomicity possibilities. I'm going to enable editing. Do you see atomicity? This will be a kind of little test for you. Have you read about atomicity in the textbook? Well, let me show you. There's two places where we can address the atomicity problem. We're going to get atomic. Here, student name. I have talked about it, but I don't think I used the word atomic before. Do you think there is ever a reason to address the students or sort the students or somehow treat first name different from last name? Would it be a good thing to separate into two different columns? This is atomicity, where student name is not atomic enough. There are reasons to be able to sort by last name and then by first name. Say we're making a list for the convocation in our college, and properly you list them alphabetical by last name. Now we may even have a reason to have middle names in here and have it atomic. Right now in our current data only has first and last name. As we plan ahead, we might even want to have a middle name. That's one reason for atomicity. So there's a target for atomicity. And another one here is in the instructor name. Is it ever reasonable, or might we want to access our data, last name regardless of their title? Dr. Smith versus Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith. Yeah, we might just want everyone with the last name Smith. And there may be we may have a need in the instructors actually keep track of their first name as well. So even though we're just seeing their last name there, the title separated from their last name might be useful when we want to search for all the doctors, rather than searching for all the names whose first characters are DR, period. That would be a little awkward query. How about I just have the instructor title as a separate column from their last name, and then I can search for all doctors just by searching through the records where the column named title is doctor. The database searching on an equivalency test rather than a substring is going to be a much quicker search. So we have reason to separate this out into two different columns, and also have this separated into two different columns. And this is where the data conversion comes in. It's best to do this now before importing into our database. We could split it up once we have it in our database, but let's split it up now before we import it into a table, a non-third normal form table. So how do we do that? Easy peasy. I'm going to insert two columns by selecting two and then right-clicking insert, and it automatically will insert two columns to the left of course ID. And what I want to put here, I've done the work for you here. I used to use the mid and then find inside of that, but I found out there is a function called text split. I can do text split, and oh, why isn't my help popping up? What happened to your help, Excel? Huh.
Dr. Elliott was taught how Excel was like being super weird lately.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be popping up a little help suggestion, and since I've done it, I know what's supposed to be there. I suppose I could search for help on text split, or I could just show you the answers. I'm gonna split this string here in B2, comma, and then the character to split the text on would be the space character, so a quote space quote. And let's see what it gives me. Text split B2, that's a column, or that's the cell name that should be split based on the space, and uh-oh, do I have to capitalize it? It's worked for me just seconds ago in my office. Let me capitalize. Maybe it has to be capitalized. Text, oh, split text. Uh-oh, is it not available? What version of Excel am I using? Am I using one that doesn't have the text split? Huh. Oh, well, we might have to use a fancier macro. Huh. Text split worked for me. Huh. Now I'm confused why it worked for me. Let me quick check the version we're on. If I do about info, we are on what version? Or is it account? Account. Huh. Professional Plus. Huh. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to do it the old school way. Instead of split, I have to do this. I have to separate out the first name. Is there split? There's not a split. I have to separate the first name. To do that, I have to do mid, a portion of the string to my left, which is there in B2, starting at position 1, and going for how many characters? Well, as many characters till I hit the space. So I do the find in that same string, B2, I'm looking for a space. I'm looking for the space, comma, within the text in B2. And that should give me my first name. Oh, I have a typo. I missed an extra parenthesis. So there's my macro. Ugly macro, just to get the first name. And I think it actually may have a space in there. Let's try a -1 there, just to see if I don't want to include the space in the first name. Yeah, do the -1. So here is the macro for getting the first name out. Of the string to my left. And I'm going to copy that find part because I'm going to need that in the second one to find the last name. Oops. So there is the macro for getting the first name extracted from that John Doe string. Now it bugs me that split text doesn't work. I'm going to quick look that up. Why is not split text not available in Excel? Because it worked fine. I used it, or text split. I mean text split. Did I do text split? Did I do it wrong? Let's see. Equals text. Yeah, there is no text split. Okay. Why isn't text split available? You got that one? Ready to get the last name now? We need it now split. So let's give that title. Remember, we're going to import it, and we know this first row is going to give me my title. So let's call it, I like to call it, I got to use camel case. I'm going to call it name first. No, name first, yeah. Now this column I'm going to want to call name last. Remember, when I import it, I can change the name as I import it, but I'm going to give it the name, so I'm planning to import it and have that be the name of that column. Now, how do I get the last name? I have to find the space and then all the characters after the space. So here's the macro for that one. Equals part of the string. The string is the B2. Where am I going to start? Well, I'm going to start where I find the space in that string, and I'm going to go 100 characters as far as it goes. That should give me my last name, and I'm going to test. I'm going to add a +1 to here just to see. I don't want to have a leading space. Let's see if I do a +1. Do I get the full last name still? Yep. So I do the +1. Find the space. Go one more, and then give me the rest of this string. So this gives me my last name.
When I have the -1, it shows me N Doe instead of Doe.
It's a +1 there.
Oh, plus.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, +1. We want to go one past the space, and then forever. We could put 99 here. I wonder if we didn't put anything there, would it? Let's see. Does it require something there? Let's just see. Yeah, it has to have a third parameter. So I have to have something after that. And what if I put a 0 there? No, that doesn't work. I have to put a large number there. I'll do 100. That just means go as far as you can.
Can I see the function again?
Yep. So this says, mid says find a section of a string. The string is over there in B2. Start where you find the space and then go over 1. And then continue on 100 or when you hit the end of the string. That gives me my part of a string. This is how I used to do it until I discovered text split. And now it bugs me, why isn't text split not available in this version of Excel?
Can you have a first name one too? As the first name.
Oh, sure. So the first name, let's see, here I can do control tilde shows me all my functions. There's my 2 functions. So the find, starting in B2, find the space and then, or start at the first character and go up until 1 before the space. This says find the space, go the character after that, and then keep going. That gives me my last name. Now once I have those 2 formulas, you all good with the formula? I can now select those columns and drag down my copy handle, and now I get all my first and last names. Now when I'm importing this data, I can say, well, skip that column, or I could delete that column after it's all imported. Now let's do the same thing over here for Dr. Smith. Let's split that out into title and last name. Similar function. I'm going to have two columns, so I'm going to insert 2 columns. Let's see, select those 2 columns, and then right-click Insert. It will automatically bring in 2 columns. And now this is going to be title, or yeah, I guess title is fine. And then this will be last name last. I'm going to be consistent in my camel case, even though they're using underscores in the data they gave me. So similar macro. So we're learning a little Excel macro, Excel function at the same time. You're refreshing your wonderful Excel skills. They come in handy when you're massaging data for import. Again, part of the string mid. The string that I want the part of is Dr. Smith over there in J2. I'm starting at position 1, and I'm going until I find the space in that string. So go as far till the space, oh, and subtract 1 because I don't want to include the space in my title. That'll give me the doctor part. And now remember, I could have just typed doctor and copied it multiple times, but I want you to learn macros here as well. It's a great thing. Again, I'm going to do equals the part of the string. The text is over there in J2, starting at, well, where I find the space in B2, or J2, plus 1, go after the space, and then continue 400 characters. That'll give me my last name. Such a small table, I could have just manually done all the fixing and got it done sooner, but I wouldn't have learned about this wonderful function that will allow me to do it for a million lines, much quicker than manually retyping them. So whether you manually retype them or not, basically it's the same macro as before. Let's do Control tilde. Here's the macro, just for practice. If you don't do the macro, just copy the columns. If you get stuck on the macro, some issue, just type doctor, 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 Smith, Smith, Adams, Brown, Brown, and you'll be done. You know, that's not a big deal. I'm not asking you to upload the macro, but that's really handy macro to know. And it still bugs me that text split somehow worked in my office on what I thought was the same version of Excel. All right, all good. Now we have our data. Let's go ahead and save it. Save it as in the same Excel sheet. Now we're ready to import it into a database and start normalization. So remember, the whole reason we did this is so we could make our data atomic before we import it. Dr. Smith has now been broken into atomic title and last name. First and last name have made more atomic, splitting them into first and last name. Anything else that could be more atomic? I don't think so. Unless you at some point would want to know their domain is separate from their username. I don't think I want to get that atomic, but this would be a possible, make this more atomic. I can know what their domain name is separate from their username. And you can see that maybe that might be useful at some point if I have a bunch of people from the same email domain. I could separate them somehow. So you could make this atomic if you like. I'm not going to. All good? All right, so we can close that, and now we're ready to import our data. And even while we're looking at the data, we can start thinking about first, second, third normal form. Let's bring it into the database first, and then we'll do our same thing we did before. We'll build queries that will turn our tables into third normal form rather than repeating groups. I already see repeating groups, right? I've got Jane Smith listed multiple times. I even have her student ID listed multiple times. Course name is listed multiple times. Repeating. Redundancy is what? Bad. Redundancy is bad. There's redundancy. All over the place we've got redundancy. So let's go and import it, and let's redesign this table from a first normal form to a lovely third normal form. So saving the Excel, and now starting up Access. So we've split the data up before we bring it into the database. That's something that if you're ever working on a database project, don't just blindly let's bring it all to the database. Maybe there's some good massaging you can do first. You could split it up once you're in the database, and you can learn. I think there's even a mid function in the database, but sometimes it's easier just to adjust the data before even bringing it in. Now it's time to start Access. And I'll start with a blank database. And I'm going to call it, I think in the assignment I gave a name request. Let's see, what name did I ask for? Yeah, username collegenormal.accdb. And remember with access, we name it when we're starting our database. So I'm going to call this jsmart college normal. And I'm even going to decide where to put it. I'm going to choose the folder in my cs312 folder, jsmart college normal, and click OK. And now we'll create a blank database, giving me a blank table to start with. I'm going to delete that table. I don't need it around. I'm going to import my data. And remember, anytime you make changes in Access and in many databases, it's not undoable. As you get more sophisticated databases, you have ways of queuing up and doing a rollback on commands. Access doesn't have the rollback like my MS SQL does. So we're going to do external data. We're going to get new data source, or no, we're going to do import. New data source from file, Excel. Let's go browse now to that Excel file that we just have modified. Gotta go to the right place. There it is. And I'm going to import it into a new table. As you get more sophisticated in your database knowledge, you'll know that you can actually link to data sources out in other databases. This is handy but very dangerous, especially if it's a local file on your computer. I believe it has, well, last time I checked, it has an absolute path to that file. So if that file ever moves on your local computer, it's broken. It won't get the data. But it's handy if you don't want to have multiple copies and you want to embed someone else's database. And I believe you can even embed databases out on the internet, out in the cloud. So I'm going to click OK. Importing the data, and I do want to check first row contains column headings. And it doesn't like the name of some of our columns, so it's going to give valid field names. I can come back there and fix that. The next page allows me to choose if I do not want to import certain fields. So right now, since I don't need the full student name, I have name first and name last, I'm going to check do not import that field. Save me time right now rather than deleting the column later. Same thing over there with the professor's name. I'm going to change that to be do not import. And I believe every field, let's see, is every field going to be a type of string? Let's see, that's treated as a double. You know, I don't like the double data type. Let's make that integer. Student, everything else I'm guessing is going to be short text. So on your import, you can determine your field type, and you can even skip. And let's see, what has it names things that it doesn't like? Let's see, I think I can arrow left and right. No, I can't. I thought I could arrow. Which one didn't he like? Oh, he didn't like this one. Oh, because name is too general. Let's call this name. Oh, I had called it name last, and we already had a name last. That's why I didn't like it. So I guess we'll call it n last. N last. And later on in the actual, when I split it up into third normal form, I can rename it to be name last of my professor, because I know I'm eventually going to create an instructor table to put it in third normal form. But for now, I'll call it n last. I think that's the only one that had a problem with the field name, not liking the field name that got assigned. Yeah. Whenever you see a new name like field 1, field 2, you know that Access renamed it for you because it didn't like, either there was no name assigned or it didn't like the name that was being assigned. Now I can click next and decide, do I want to add a primary key or choose my own primary key? Let's go with, since we don't have our data really in normal format, let's choose no primary key. Access might complain, but we know that this is our first normal form. It's not going to be the final format for my database. And I can click next and decide the name of my table. Let's call that I think I gave a title to give that table. I think I want you to call it original 1NF. Original 1NF. So give the name original 1NF. I'm not going to be fussy about the capitalization. And now I don't need to analyze the table. Let's just import it and get it over with. I don't need to save import steps. I can go through that import again because I need to learn that whole process. And close. If you wanted to save import steps, you could go back and see what that is. Maybe for fun, maybe it's some SQL code that might be interesting. So we'll call it a import. I'm just saving just in case the SQL code is interesting. Not going to create a task out of that, and save the import. All right, there's my table in first normal form. Double click to see my data. Now, from what you learned last time in normalization, where do you see the opportunities for splitting this up into multiple tables that are related? Knowing that I have repeating groups in here, what should I do to split up this data into?
So the instructors and everything and details related to them should be split up into their own table.
Okay, instructors in their own table.
The students in their own table, and I would say the courses in their own table, even though there's very little left, and then we link them all up together.
Okay, so I have candidate, instructors, students, and courses. Sounds good to me. How do we do that? Let's do that one at a time. Let's go, how about we go left to right? So we have our students first. What should we split up for a student table?
Student, name first and name last.
Yeah. Okay, so let's write the query that basically captures all students, their IDs, and their first and last names. So I'm going to go to create, query design, and choose, well, there's only one table to choose from. I double click on that. I can close the add tables, doesn't matter. What do I want to see in my student table? I want their ID, that's going to become the primary key, their first and last name. And if we go back at this, is there anything else, any other information dependent on the student ID? Nope, there's all instructor information and course information. So these two columns are dependent on the student ID. Since that indicates, hey, that should be in a separate table, so I don't have to repeat a student's name, I'm going to then have this query, and I can run it before making it a query that does anything. I can view the data that it shows. Oh, it will give me that data. I can actually go into the properties of my query right now and click here and go to properties. I can turn on unique values right now to be yes, and I can view what data then would be displayed. There I see 3 students. Now that I get the right information that I want to go into another table, I can simply choose turn it into a make table, and the table name is going to be students. You can choose plural or singular. I'm going to choose singular. Keep it in my same database. And now my query, if I look at the SQL view, there I see the part into student. That's the part that make table puts in my query. That I select the information, it's going to go into a new table called student. The data is coming from a table named original 1NF. Back to, or I can click the exclamation point right now, and it'll say, hey, I'm going to create a table. But before I do that, though, let's check the data again. Yes, this is what's going to go into a table. I don't want any repeating students. If I do see repeating, remember that is in the properties of my query. Properties, unique should say yes. Now run it, and it'll say I'm about to insert 3 rows, right? And click yes. And I have a student table, and I'm going to save my query. Yes, question?
What if I accidentally didn't say filter out repeating
Oh, easy.
values?
You can rerun the query and edit the query and make it unique, or you can simply go to your table it created and delete the extra row.
I want to know how to get back to my query if I can't see it.
Oh, if you can't see the query, come over here and make sure this is set.
Oh, never mind. Sorry.
Okay.
I found it.
All right. Yeah, to fix it, remember you just click out in the gray here and choose View Properties, and there. I know don't want student properties. I mean the query properties. Why is it showing me my property sheet of my query? Properties. There. Make unique values, yes. And you can always rerun the query. I believe it'll rebuild your table for you. Now remember, our tables don't have any primary keys yet. We're not going to worry about that yet. To save this query, as I close it, I'll call it make student. Now, the only reason I'm saving it is so my instructor can tell that I know how to build a query. And it shows up as a dangerous query. It'll rewrite your student table on you if you run that, and it'll warn you as well. Nice thing about that is if I ever delete my student table, it'll rebuild it from the original data. Okay. Now we want to build the instructor table. Easy peasy. We want the instructor's name and their title and their last name. They're currently called nlast. Oh, do we want to know what their office is? That'd probably be good too. Their instructor office. And their email. So it looks like all these fields are all dependent on the instructor, and those are partial dependencies, right? Partial dependencies, they only depend on the instructor ID, therefore this whole piece of this table we want to split into a separate table. Instructor with their ID and their pertinent information. Sound good? All right. Now, another way to do it, I think I could copy paste it into a new table, but let's do it the query way because that's the way we're going to do it when we have huge tables. So let's learn the query way by doing create another query using the data from the original 1NF, and this time I'm grabbing an instructor ID, title, and last, instructor office, and their email. Before running it or turning it into a make table, I do see, oh, I need to make sure it's unique. Go back to properties, make sure properties has unique values, and the query properties, click in the gray, and there my unique values turns off. And now run it again. There we go. If there were millions of them here, it would be useful. I could sort on instructor ID just to make sure I had all million in a nice orderly fashion. But I don't worry about the ordering right now. I can now turn this into a make table, and the table name I want to create is instructor. Click OK. It's not going to make it happen yet. Now when I run it, it will put 3 rows in the instructor table. And remember, we're doing data transfer. It's going to be a lot more than 3. If it were just 3, I could do it all by hand. I'm going to save that query. When I close it, say yes, save it, and make instructor table. And what was the third normalization we wanted to do? Do you remember the third one?
Classes.
Course ID and course name, right? Okay. And I think there's one more, but I'll let you think about it. Let's get our course ID. Again, practicing building queries, even though I know I could build it by hand. Query, original. The data I want to get for building the course table is the course ID and course name. Anything else I need?
Maybe the instructor.
Ooh. What do you think? Instructor?
It might be one of those things where it's like I don't know if that's really an attribute of the course.
Right.
You know? Like you would only include something in a table if it's truly an attribute of the object.
But is it important to know what instructor is teaching that course?
Probably.
And is there only one instructor that teaches a course?
No.
We don't know the business rules at this point, but I think we can assume there's one instructor assigned to a course. And this is where that one-to-one relationship, you usually say, well, if there's a one-to-one relationship between a course and the instructor teaching it, that would make sense that I include the instructor ID in the course table. And this is a design issue. You could have a separate table of what instructors are assigned to what courses. Or if you have the one-to-one relationship, might as well just throw the instructor's ID in my course ID table. Let's try that and see what we get. So let's go back to view. Let's see, does this data make sense? I have one class listed twice, and it is a duplicate. Same thing with the calculus. So let's go back and change unique in the property sheet of my query property to be unique, and run it again. And there's 3 courses with the 1 instructor. So this is a case where I'd say if there's a one-to-one relationship between a course to instructor, actually the instructor is the primary key side, so instructor would be the one side. I guess an instructor could teach many courses, but it makes sense that I have a reserved spot in my course information about what instructor is teaching that course. So I think this is a good query. So let's go back to the design view, turn it into a make table, and this is going to be my course table. And I click OK, and now I run it to create my 3 instructors. Or sorry, 3 courses. Now let's see, anything else going on here? There's another thing I'm going to need. And let's close and save that as make course table. Do you see anything else that I need in order to preserve the data that I had in my original data with lots of redundancy? There's one more thing I'm going to need. Takes a little thinking of the business.
Salaries and stuff.
Well, with salaries, that would be extra information. It's not in our table, so we could put a field for it, but we wouldn't know what to put there. There's one piece of information in this table that I need to preserve that is not preserved right now in the course and instructor and student table.
Oh, department ID?
Well, also the instructor office too.
Or did we? Oh, we don't have a department ID anymore.
Yeah, we need department. Yeah, that's right. We have department and department name. We need to split that up. Okay, let's do that. And there's still one remaining. So let's go and create a department table. So you're getting real good at this now, right? Easy stuff. This is the point of repeating is, okay, it becomes, okay, the department is split up into department ID and department name. Even though it doesn't say it here, I suppose I might want to make room for a department who is the chair of the department, but I'm only going to stick with what's in this table. Just like salaries makes a lot of sense, but we won't add it, we'll just add just from the data we have. So department ID and department name, and let's go. We know that we need to make a unique values in my query, unique values. And there I have the 2 departments represented in that data. And let's then build the department table. And run it. And now I have my department table. And save that query as make department table. Just for future reference of what those wonderful queries did. Now there is one more table that I need. I'm representing all the courses, departments, and instructors and students, splitting them into non-redundant data. But what is represented in this table that is not yet in the other tables? Can you see?
Instructor office.
The office is in the instructor table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There could be more information about offices like location and building, but right now we don't have that in our data. You see one more relationship.
Oh, title or
Or we have instructor, then their title.
The course is associated with the department, so it should have a foreign key of the department ID.
That could be, yeah. The course ID and what their department they're in. I like that. Yeah, that makes sense. Like course to department that it belongs to. I'm going to give you a clue here. Student and courses. Are we preserving this relationship here? What relationship am I blinking on here?
Like ones that people are enrolled in?
Yeah, we need we need to keep track of what courses they're enrolled in. These tables split out all our information yet into non-redundant data, but if I don't save what students are enrolled in what, I lose that link. And I think the other what course belongs to the department, that might be a valid thing too. So we could do that. So let's add students and what courses are enrolled in. We need that table. See what I'm saying? All right, so let's go build that table. Again, with a query that simply lists the student ID and what course they're in. And we're assuming the data follows a business rule that they can't be listed twice. We should see that when we don't turn on unique values yet. Let's go ahead and build that query now. Create a query to build our associative, basically it's our association between the students and courses, because many students can enroll in many courses. We have to turn a many-to-many relationship into one-to-many from student, one-to-many from courses, and that becomes our enrollment table. So the query would be select from the original data the student ID and the course they're enrolled in. That's all I need. This is my enrollment table. This is my associative table. I don't need any of the other fields. Let's go ahead and make the table. Well, let's run it first before we make the table. And is all the data unique? Sure looks unique to me. Let's, just for nice viewing, let's sort it by ascending by student name, by student ID. And let's also choose unique just to be safe, even though I see that they're all unique. I can turn on unique just to make sure I don't have a student enrolled in the same course twice. That would be an error in our data. And now I can use this to build my enrollment table. And I can come back and actually give it, if I want to have a primary key on the enrollment relationship or the date they were enrolled, that would be, again, extra data that would make sense to be in there, but I don't have that in my table. So back to design, turn it into a make table. The name of the table is going to be enrollment. And now run it to make the table. No, I haven't run it yet. Now I'm running it, pasting 5 rows into a new table, and saving my query as I close it as make enrollment table. Now the assignment of course to a department. Do I have that in my course table? I think that was a good thing to have actually included in this table. So I think I'm going to redesign my make course table to include the department. So I'm going to close my course table. I could even delete it right now. But I believe my make course will remake it. So let's edit make course table, because I realized I had overlooked. We should keep track of what department a course is in. So let's add department ID to the course table. And now if I just rerun it, it will remake my course table, I believe. Let's make sure that that happens. Will be deleted before you run the query. Yep, that's what I want. And yes. And I can close this or save changes and then close it. And now let's take a look at my course table. Keeping track of what courses and what department. A good link that I forgot to include when I first made my course table. Now, let's go examine, see if we're missing anything, saving changes. Have we missed anything? We can keep track of students, what course they're in, courses, what department they're in, and instructor. Do we have instructor and what department they're in? Uh-oh, we messed up on the instructor table. We need to know what department the instructor is in. So let's go and fix our make instructor table. Edit that. Add department ID, because that's important to know. And what I like to do, I like to put anything related to foreign key. I like to make that first in my table, so I can grab that and drag it over. That'll make sure those two columns are right next to each other. And I can always do that too. Once I have the table, I can design my table. This just makes sure when I recreate my instructor table, it'll put them right next to each other. Now I can rerun make the instructor table and continue replacing it, and there. So it's nice to know how I created the table for future reference, and if I realize I missed a column, just recreate the data by having that query available, but the query that made the table, saving my changes. So we keep track now of courses and what department they belong to, the department and what their name is, students what are enrolled in what courses, instructors and what department they're in, and their titles and email, their students and their names and first and last names. Now the real test of whether I have all the data correctly is can I generate a query that remakes the original data that's in first normal form. Could I create this list of information from a query? Then I know that I have all the pertinent data properly divided in third normal form. And maybe we'll do that, but first let's establish our relationships. And because I adjusted my column widths, it's asking me, do I want to save changes? So at this point, I have all my tables. Now I want to see, can I establish the relationships? And remember where we do that? Well, first of all, the enrollment table. Let's look at that. Do I need a primary key in the enrollment table? Or a student course, is that enough to make a primary key in the enrollment table? What do you think?
Since the courses aren't unique, you would definitely need to. Because multiple students can be in the same course.
And if we chose these both, like clicking in the gray and clicking on that, making it the primary key, this would guarantee that the same student can't register for the same course multiple times. Because the primary key, that's the key thing about it is unique. So I can make both of those the primary key. And of course, this seems like a meaningless table, but remember, we would be also keeping track of the date they enrolled, what semester it was. There's lots of information we don't have in our table that would be in the enrollment. So even though this looks silly, in reality there would be more information to go with the enrollment. Like
I can't make them both the primary key.
Oh, really?
It automatically.
Does it say it would violate uniqueness?
No, it just automatically swaps it over.
Really? Interesting.
I think
And
you
you're
have
in.
to select both of them at the same time and hit primary key.
Oh, I see. So yeah, hit shift. There you go. Okay, so now the enrollment has a primary key. Let's go through each course now and set the primary key. Course, design view. Course ID seems like that makes sense to make that the primary key. Bing, done. Oh, and just for fun here, I'm going to reorder my columns and put a comment in there that they are foreign keys. It's always good to comment things out. F key in to department table. And FK to instructor. Even though the relationship table is going to be showing that, it's good to have it in the comments. Department table, department ID. Well, it's the primary key. It's going to be referred to by other tables. I don't need to put any comments. Enrollment. Oh, this is a foreign key in student table. And this is a foreign key in the course table. In course. Seems obvious, but you never know. You want to make it clear. You not an FL, an FK. Not Florida. All right. Instructor. I think we just have the department key, foreign key, FK to department, in department. And the student, they are not, are they members of a department now? Do we assign students to departments?
Nope.
Is this a business, I guess if we determine the business rule in our college. Right now we know what instructor is assigned to a department, and therefore the course is part of a department. If I want to assign the students to a department, I could add that additional information. But I'm not going to worry about that for now. But there's lots of possibilities. And this is where you'd sit down with the college and say, okay, here's our design. Show them the relationship table. Does this make sense? And someone would say, hey, based on what I see in your picture, don't students have to belong to a department? Is that a rule? Well, let's go to our database tools now and establish our relationships. Database tools, relationships. Show all our tables. Can I double click on each table? Oh, and I can actually accidentally show a table twice. Sometimes that has to happen based on if I get really complex relationships. Now let's just arrange these nicely and see our relationships between our tables. So a student has a student ID, and we refer to them in the enrollment table. I don't need the original 1 and F in there, but I have that selected. Student ID is referring to, wait a minute, the student, that's supposed to be a primary key. What happened there? I messed up. And department ID, we're missing a primary key there. Let's see if I can fix that. I'm not sure if Access is going to be happy with this. Let's go. I'm going to close this and go back and make my proper primary keys. Department ID should be primary key. And student ID should be primary key. I forgot to do that when I was putting in my comments. Now back to relationships and see if that primary key in the enrollment table is going to be a problem. Oh, didn't do it for instructor either. Let's fix instructor. Forgot to make the instructor primary key. Instructor ID. Now back to relationships. Now let's see if we can draw the lines. The student has a department. Let's go with the instructor. Instructor has a department ID. So let's connect those together. Department ID is a foreign key in the department. Enforce, cascade, update, delete. The department, or the instructor teaches a course. Let's put department on this side. And department, the instructor teaches a course. Oh, the course is a member of a department. And the instructor ID is referred to in the instructor table. And just to avoid crossing lines, I'll move that down. Now, what to do with enrollment? Will Access let me do this? Let's see. Will maybe go from primary key to a partial primary key? Let's see what it does. Student ID here is referring to a foreign key here. Oh, it's not complaining. Let's see if it complains. Oh, it didn't complain, good. Maybe because it's a partial primary key. Course is referring to the primary key in the course table, course ID. Enforce, cascade, update, delete. Looks like Axis is happy to do that relationship. I was a little worried, key to key it wouldn't like, because usually when it's a normal single key, it doesn't like, it knows you've got a problem. If you have a primary key in one table and it's also the same singular primary key in another table, that usually indicates a problem. And notice it doesn't matter that we named it the same. I'm giving it the same name just to make it clear what is supposed to be linked to. I could have called it Department FK in my name, and it would have been just as well happy. But naming it the same just helps for documentation or for natural understanding of my database. And remember what this relationship does then is as I view other tables now or add data, I will automatically follow these rules that you can't refer to a department that isn't already referred to in the department table. If you add an instructor and have a typo here, it will break. But we can build the lookups in our fields to make sure that when they choose a department, it can only be chosen from existing departments. That's an extra thing we can do. So let's close our relationships, and we have a pretty good database set up. But let's say now we want to use this. Say we want to add a course. Right now, if I want to go add a course, let's see if I want to add a new course. Let's call it C104. Department ID. What if I say D03? It's not complaining yet, but watch what happens if I try to leave that row. Uh-oh. You don't have a department called D03, although it's letting me type D03. We would like to fix that. So how can we fix that? That's Go ahead.
Is it because of all the relationship options we put in here? Or?
Yeah, and we want that to be enforced. We don't want them to be a type of department that doesn't exist. So we would actually, a better message would be, please update the department table before entering a new department in your course ID, because we need to name a department before we can refer to it. What we can do here is, in the design of this course table, we can put here in the department ID where we can enter something. Since that's a foreign key to the department table, remember that lookup? We can turn this into a lookup. Only allow this to be a list box of existing departments. Yes, Samuel?
I'm getting an error when I try to create a relationship between a primary key and a non-primary key.
Okay, let's take a look.
Between department and course here, department and course, department ID.
Primary key, and what does it say when you try to
So when I try
enforce
to
referential integrity?
edit the relationship.
Yep. It violates the rules. So you have.
Do I need to make sure that I undid any data I may have put in?
Yeah, go to your course table and let's see if you had valid department. There you go. So you can delete that record.
Okay.
And this is why having those. This is one reason we have the relationships. It doesn't let you enter bad data now that we've established the relationship. That's the critical thing about this. Now that we've established this metadata, and normally you do this before bringing any data into your table. This actually, while we're making these rules, it's validating that the data we have is following the rules. And if any data we have in our database is not following the rules, it'll say, sorry, I can't establish referential integrity because what you have in the table doesn't meet that rule. And so that's because you had edited your course table and had an extra course in there that had violated the rules. And that's why those rules are so important, is that whole ERD, that's why we do that, because as we're entering data, we don't want the data to be corrupt. So going back to the design of our course table, we would like to, if they're entering data, to make sure department ID is an existing department. So let's go to the lookup and turn that into something when we want to enter data. Instead of having to remember department numbers, we can go to a list box that shows our department name that goes along with the department that this course is in. So instead of choosing a department by just the name, I can come here and make that a table or query, and then change the row source to be table query, and then row source, I can click on this little 3 dots and build the query that gets me my list of courses that are departments that are valid. So what I want to be entered in this field will be a department ID, so I'm choosing the row source to be a query of the department table. The ID is what's going to be entered into the field of the courses, but I want to be able to see when I do the lookup to actually see the name of that department as I choose it. And then I can close this query because I made the query. I could see what it's going to give me. There's my list of departments. And close that query, and the query builder now will build that statement, which is my row source. Oh, and it's only giving me a column count of 1. Let's change that column count to 2. And the column width to be, how about we show, I guess I'd like to know my department number. So I'm going to make the column width to be 1 comma, or is it 1 colon? I think it's 1 semicolon 2. Yeah, it's happy with that. And allow multiple values? No. Allow value list edits? No. And I do want it to limit to lists. We'll see how this looks. So I add this to my lookup for when I enter data in datasheet view. Let's see what that looks like now. Saving my changes. Now when I go to choose, say I'm choosing which department someone's in. Look at that, it shows me the department name if I increase the width of this column. Now when I come to choose what department that is, I can see what D01 stands for. If I'm adding a new course, I can say, oh, what department is this course going to be assigned to? And it allows me to choose from existing departments. And does it still let me type? I think it still lets me type. There should be an option where it limits it to the list. I thought that would work, but I don't think they have that working yet, where you limit it and you can't type a new thing here. You have to select only what from available departments. I want to do the same thing for the instructor. I don't want to have to remember instructors by their names. I want to use the lookup when I'm entering data here. So let's go back to design view and turn my instructor choice into something that is a lookup as a, let's try combo box this time and see how that behaves differently from list box. Combo box, the row source is still my department. Let's build a query. This is my instructor. I want to see their ID and their last name. I guess should we show their title? Yeah, we'll show their title and last name. 3 columns now that will show when I go to choose an instructor. Close that query. It'll build that into my lookup. And there's the query. We're going to stick with the bound column. That's my first column, is the ID of the instructor. But let's show 3 columns and make the widths. We'll do 1 colon 1 colon 1 and see how that looks. Limit to, oh, here's the limit to list. Let's change that to yes, limit to list, and see if it keeps me from trying to type in a non-existent instructor. So I chose combo box this time just to see how that behaves differently from the list box. View data, saving the table. Now when I go to enter an instructor for a new course, there are my instructors. Will let me type something? Oh, it still lets me type something. And I believe, let's see what happens if I try to type something. It should say, oh, if I leave the row, there we go. That's the error I'll get. It doesn't give me you're violating the rules. It gives me, you haven't entered something that belongs to that list. So I can Control Z that and go back to my design view. And another thing I'm going to add is there a error message? Oh, I guess there's not an error message there. Let me change, it does not allow me to edit it, but it's still, even though I say limit to list, that's the only thing that keeps me from entering another instructor. an invalid instructor. So I guess that'll work. So here, if I ever want to enter a new course, the course ID has to be, let's see, something I assigned. It has to be unique. The department ID has to be chosen from existing departments. And the instructor ID has to be chosen from existing instructors. But I can come up with the name of the course because I'm entering a new course in my course table. So this is where you really learn, do I have all that I need, and is it behaving the way I like? I'm refining not the third normal form, but how I can now access the data in my tables. So I can close that, saving my changes to my column widths. Let's do that with, one more time, let's do that with, how about we do that with enrollment, where we have an existing student can only be enrolled in an existing class. So let's modify the design of that. Student ID is going to be selected from existing students. So in the lookup, I'm going to choose the list box this time. The query is going to be, give me the list of students and their names. So let's get the student table. The ID is the first thing. And let's go first name and last name. That's my query builder of what can be entered into that column for the student ID of a student being enrolled. Close the query builder. And now choose the bound column 1. Column count is 3 because I want to see their ID and their first and last names. I can give my widths. I'll do 1:1:1. Multiple values, no. Limit to, oh, look at, there is not a limit to list in the text box. So I do like combo boxes better now. The text box does allow me to enter, and there is no yes, no limit to list. That explains why. Let's change that to a combo box and see if it'll give me the initial fields. Let's turn that, yeah, I'm gonna make that a combo box and check limit to list yes. Same thing with course ID. Let's make that a lookup, a combo box. The query is going to be, design the query. It's going to take my course table, get the ID of the course. I don't think I need to see the department ID, instructor ID, and the course name. Close that lookup builder. I want to see the ID and the name, so I'll change the column count to 2. Widths of, I'll do 1 and 1:1. Limit to list, yes. And now let's see how it behaves when I go to try to enter a new enrollment. Here comes a new enrollment. Well, let's choose a student. There we go. Let's choose Sarah. And let's enroll her in, oh, I can try to enroll her in C103, it's not keeping me, but if I try to leave that row, because these 2 columns are primary key, it should stop me. Yep, it should, oh, I can't do that. It doesn't give me a very helpful error message. It should say, you're trying to enroll the same student in the same course twice. It doesn't do that, but I can at least make sure that rule is followed. They are not allowed to enter the same student in the same course because I've made these 2 the combination key. So I have to choose something other than a course that Sarah is already enrolled in. That's something that you have to write extra code for in our case. Yes?
Can I ask a question about the midterm?
Oh, sure.
Are you going to give us like a study guide or anything?
Yeah, and we'll look at that. I'll compose that tonight and Friday and tomorrow, and even just go over it Tuesday. Tuesday is a big plan for review, catch up, and over a study sheet. Good question. And remind me if you don't see one. Good question. Okay, I think that's it for today. All you gotta do here with this is you're welcome to add more lookups in practice. That's a great way basically just to learn the ins and outs of Access. The more you're familiar with Access, the better you'll be with the more sophisticated database issues. This making a table, you're going to have to learn if you want to learn SQL, you can learn the SQL view, learn how we selected information, into a new table. Easy peasy. Access just makes it nice and friendly to do that. So save that database and you can upload it to Schoology. If you ever wanted to like put comments of what you did, you can always create a form, and you can put a text box in a form. Text box and put in comments. That's something you can do if you want to add any documentation to Access databases. Forms are an easy way to just say, hey, I'm going to create a description of this. I can go to form design and add text where you could explain, hey, this is a database that does such and such. But that's all extra beyond, but it's kind of a fun thing to put in. You could say this form as comments or description. This is a cool database. Save that form, call it README, and then when I open my database, there's a README form. Double click on that, and it just shows me that. So if you ever want to keep information about your database, again, this is Access doing this for us. I can package little comments about my database in forms and edit them to my heart's content in Design View. We're not going to do a lot of database design. We'll do form design in the system analysis course. Access is going to be our GUI builder, our poor man's GUI builder. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy some of that lovely weather today. It's going to be getting colder next week.
Like maybe in the freezing?
There's talk of it, yeah. At least frost in the morning.
Ooh, nice.
And I'm going to stop the recording. And Abby, we prayed for you. Hope you get better.